Hi folks, how's it going? I've had a few questions in on the member channel just recently about solo training. Of course, we don't always have access to a class or to training partners. So what can we do to keep our training up when we're working on our own? Now, luckily in Systema, there's hundreds of ways. And of course, Systema is very different from most other martial arts, not all martial arts, but very different from most in that we don't have any form or kata. So if you train in karate or kung fu or many other things, when you're on your own, you can practice through your sequences and your set movements. In absence of that, how do we train ourselves in Systema, particularly for when it comes to application for self-defense or combat work? Well, I've put some answers up on the member channel, and of course, if you want to get access to that and all the other instructional content, in fact, we've got over 100 downloads available now on all sorts of subjects on that channel. Just click the join button below and that will give you all the details. But what I thought I'd do today is just give you an idea of the process or part of the process that we use in order to work our solo training into our application work, from exercise to application. Now, one of the key things we work on for solo training in Systema is our movement, freedom of movement. And of course, this incorporates our breathing, our posture, our levels of tension and relaxation and all that. But really, what we're trying to achieve is this freedom of movement throughout the whole body. Free from unnecessary tension and free, of course, from any psychological or emotional tension as well. So there's a lot of store put in this kind of work, just moving the body around, whether you're standing up or you're working on the floor, or of course you can be working with sticks and similar, really to get this movement, particularly in the shoulders, particularly in the hips. So you might start with simple rotations throughout the various joints, and then you'll gradually start to incorporate more spiral movements. You can start to incorporate wave type movements. You can work with the whole body. You can work just to isolate a single joint or a small part of the body. And one other thing that's very important to do is you learn how to attach all these movements together. So that means my body can work in isolation, or I can chain these movements together. So that's one aspect of solo training. And it's very important when we do this, we're always considering function. It's not like if you do a form or a kata, you might be thinking someone's punching here, so I block, then I grab the arm, then I apply a lock, and then I punch. It's not really on that level. In fact, one of the beauties of Systema movement is that it's multifunctional. So this can help me, put my jumper on and off, for example. It might help me if I'm in a bit of a squeeze somewhere, or I can just get through a gap. Or it can help me if someone's trying to lock up my arm, as we'll see in just a moment. So again, another key aspect is that everything we do, every movement is also functional. Functional on a couple of levels. One, in terms of enabling me to do something, to achieve something, but also functional in terms of being good for my health as well. I could show you lots of different movements that are strong in terms of a fight, but of course, if you train those and train them, then you're probably going to wreck your shoulders or your knees or your hips or whatever else it is. So we get this multifunctional purpose for our exercise in that we have this application aspect. In that sense, the solo training is the kata for Systema, but in doing that, we're also getting very good health benefits as well. So we can see that in terms of developing mobility in the body, but if we want to develop strength as well, then all the same stuff applies. I'm developing strength through my mobility, and whatever method I'm using, whether I'm using the weighted bar, whether I'm using kettlebells or the sledgehammer, the movements that I do with that are informed by that earlier work I've done, but also these movements of their own practicality and function as well. So if I'm doing this kind of movement with the sledgehammer, then this maps directly onto how you might punch someone, for example. So there's this, again, dual functionality built into all the equipment or weight training, if you want to call it that, in that, yes, it's developing strength through a range of motion, but it also has this practical application as well. And that practical application is using exactly the same movement, exactly the same mechanics. I see like kettlebells are very popular at the moment, which is great because they're a great tool for developing strength and developing that linking of the movement throughout the body. But they work best in terms of application if you use that same method for your striking. I think there may be an issue of if you're working your kettlebells one way, one type of movement, then you come to apply that in a strike, you're working a sort of different set of mechanics perhaps. You know, so you might get some benefit, some overlap, but I think you'll get much more if you use that same method for your weight training as you do for your striking. Otherwise, I feel it can be a little bit like you learn to play scales on the piano and then you're trying to apply that to a guitar. There's some crossover, but it's not necessarily the most efficient way to do things. So that's how your solo training will work, or at least part of it will work. You can then work this with partners. So let's look specifically at how, for example, we can test out that idea of shoulder movement with a partner. So I'm going to ask Jay to twist my arm up because Jay's a strong guy. And if he, really grab here, twist, okay. Twist, twist, twist. You can bring a hand up here if you want, or whatever. So I put myself in a very bad situation. If you apply your strength here. Now, if I try and apply any sort of strength in order to get out of this, it's impossible. As soon as I apply that tension, all I do is lock myself up even more anyway, okay? So instead, I relax my arm off, you feel? Yeah, straight away. You still got your strength there though. Yeah. And now I start to use my movement. Yeah. And it becomes pretty effortless, to be honest with you. So however much force he gives me, even if I allow that force to come into the body to distort my posture, my structure, by getting this movement working, I start to change the angle, and from there, it kind of, it sort of drains your strength away, you know, not in any mystical sense or anything else, but purely just from changing the angle. There he can put all his weight into it and everything else. I relax. I work from the shoulder. Yeah. And I can straighten up. So once you've got that idea of that movement, of course now if he grabs my arm, I'm not going to wait for him to actually put the lock on, but we do it kind of slow. See, as soon as he comes here, I can start doing that movement and I'm already countering what he's doing to me. So that movement is not a specific technique. So, you know, it's not like we then go, oh right, so if someone grabs, what I have to do is put my arm there and then do this. It's not what you do, it's how you do it, as the song goes, right? So I apply that straight away. Now look here, see this one now, I've got that same idea. I don't have to bring the hand back to strike because I've got this movement here, for example. So whatever position I put in, whatever is happening to me, if I can come back to this kind of movement, then I stand a good chance of being able to deal with it. So again, just to emphasize the point, I think sometimes people see a Systema clip of someone doing that kind of thing, or they could have 3 people pushing on them, or, you know, there's all sorts of stuff. And they'll assume that this is a self-defense scenario that we've set up and we're showing a technique to get out of this situation. And hopefully, as I'll make clear there, this isn't. This is just a way of testing that particular movement or learning to bring the qualities of that movement into a more pressured situation to work against resistance, to work against some type of force coming in or whatever it is. Of course, this work you then put into your self-defense training whether that be in the form of different types of sparring, whether you're working scenarios, whether we're working to test things, and I've spoken about those many times before. But really, what you do in those situations doesn't rely on technique, it doesn't rely on memorizing lots of movements. You come back to this solo work where you've got this movement, you've got this way of using your body, which to me feels like a very natural way. It's just natural movement. I'm not pretending to be anything else. I'm not developing super mystical, magical powers and, you know, any of that kind of thing. I'm just using my body in a very effective and efficient way against whatever type of pressure is being applied to it. And of course, everything that we talk about physically also applies emotionally and psychologically as well. I hope then that that gives you some insight into solo training and how you can develop that for practical use. And as I said, that doesn't have to be self-defense or a fight. It can be all sorts of situations. And, you know, especially as you get older, which we all are, I think you prize mobility more and more and more. We'll get to that stage where you make a noise when you get up from the chair. Right, that's time to start thinking, all right, I need to start working a little bit more on the hips, on my legs. I'll go out and roll around on the ground a little bit, you know. The main things, I think, as you age, if you can maintain your mobility, your balance and your grip strength, then, you know, that should see you well into old age. I hope. I'll let you know. I'll be back in 20 years. I'll let you know how I'm getting on. All right, as usual, if you do have any comments, questions or suggestions, sensible ones, please, pop them down below. I'll do my best to answer. And again, if you want to access, say there's over 100 downloads now on the member channel, just click join below for all the details. Take care.